Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and our guest today is the Mayor of Marathon, Rick Dumas. Welcome back, Rick.
Great to be back, Steve.
Now, Rick, we were just talking really about some of the history of Marathon, and so we saw that from your youth, the town more than doubled in size when the gold mining came in, and now that's been kind of slacking off, and the population's kind of back to almost double to what it was. So Marathon's been through a lot in terms of boom, and I don't know if we've got a bust, but we have, we started with really the pulp mill you talked about. Your dad went to work there in the pulp mill, and that's when the community was growing. Boomed now with the gold mining. That's now kind of falling off. Where do we go in terms of the economy in the Marathon area?
Well, so Marathon in particular has always been a community, and we've always had a great administration as well as a great council to work together. We've never been a council that has had difficulty working together. We've always said, look, we've got to move our community forward. So we've always been a community looking at as a progressive community. We call ourselves the hub of the North Shore, and we promote ourselves that, and we've been very successful in that regards. Yes, our mill went down in 2009. And we looked at 230 direct jobs that were impacting our community. So we sat down, we met with the administration, met with the mill people, and talked about how we're going to move forward. Well, actually, at the end of the day, we were very successful in regards to keeping and retaining our people in our community. And a lot of people are now going out and working in remote places or creating their own businesses. And we've seen a lot of people create their own businesses. Now, the age of the mill workers were at that time, a lot of them were in their late 50s, mid 50s. So the average age was high, Steve. So we were lucky in that regard. So some of them just retired and stayed within the community. But we've also been...
And retirement itself can be an economic stimulus.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we promoted it to the community, where we want to continue to retain those individuals as well as bring in new people. So at the same time, coincidentally, the mining sector was also getting up there in age. The average age of the mining sector was up in the 50s as well. So some of those younger individuals from the mill were able to go over to the mining sector, and a mill is a mill, regardless if it's a mine or a mill, a pulp mill. But underground was a little more different, so those individuals took on advantage. We worked with the college, created a Common Core program, and converted a lot of those individuals from the mill to the mining sector. And the mine was able to incorporate some of those individuals, a lot of those individuals, so they stayed in our community. So we never seen an exodus of population in the community. It was really a well-oiled machine in the sense that everybody worked together.
So the city, what I hear you saying is that the city took on a role to try to help with that transition in terms of the training and in terms of...
Absolutely. We had a rate, so the mill went down in February, was announcement, February 2009. March of 2009 was the actual closure of the mill. By the spring of 2009, we had a labor adjustment set up in the local mall, and re-educational tools, everything in regards to those individuals. We had all kinds of staff there. It was like I'm talking, the transition was smooth in regards to that. So a lot of those individuals took advantage of that labor adjustment and worked through that, and were able to get retrained. And then, of course, the government, extended the unemployment program, had different WEPA funding models, training models through the unemployment. It was really well done, but the municipality was the lead. You're absolutely working with the mill and the college, and that was great. And by doing that, we were able to make that transition really smoothly. And nobody wants to see anybody lose their job. And and their pensions were affected and everything. But at the end of the day, we did the best we possibly could to make sure that transition was as smooth as it was possible.
Okay, now that's in terms of the workers.
Right.
Now you were talking to me earlier about the mill site itself.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of infrastructure there when they leave. What's been the history? What's happened since 2009 with the mill site?
Well, a lot. We were very huge advocate with the government of Ontario to make sure that site was going to be torn down and cleaned up. So we worked closely with the Ministry of Environment, worked with Minister Gravel, our MPP, to make sure that there was nobody going to be running away from that site and leaving the site there as a big white elephant. And we see that in somewhere in our regions where those mills stand today and haven't been operating for a decade or better, right? So we were successful at that. So the mill site from about 2011 or so has been starting to be torn down, and it's a long process. So as we speak, there's about 85% of that mill that's been torn down, and we're looking at opportunities to redevelop it. Since that time, we've been working with various different companies, Steve, and to look at redevelopment of the site. We have a deep water port, access to the world by marine. We have the rail line that's right there, and of course the highway corridor with the multimodal transportation, as we say, with the government's growth plan. We look at those opportunities. So we see there's opportunities there. It's a huge industrial site. It's never going to be redeveloped for anything else, so we believe there's opportunities there. And with the companies we're working with, we see potential in Marathon for diversification. And you look at successful communities who've diversified from big industry closing down, they don't go back chasing big industry. They chase multiple smaller industries that could be economically diversified, where if there's any type of hiccup, there's not an effect of one or another. It's going to spread out through multiple companies.
So who paid for the cleanup of the mill site?
Well, today as we speak, the previous owners of that site, because it was called Marathon Pulp, but of course there was a company behind that corporation, and they've been forced under the court to clean up that site.
And what was the role of the city in that process?
Well, the city was in direct contact with the government all through the process, right from the beginning, because we felt that if we weren't going to be there, that there wouldn't be any pressure put on that company. And of course, you know, when you talk Corporates Act, there's always a numbered company operating as this, but there's also other companies behind that number of companies, and that was the case we were afraid of. Mm-hmm. So we were able to get those companies in to make sure that the place was cleaned up. As well, we were successful under the remedial action plan for the harbor itself, and the government was able to go back into the 60s and go after the companies who were polluting the lake, the Great Lake, at the time with mercury. So that harbor in front of the mill was cleaned up with about a $7 million program, and those dollars were provided by the previous companies that ran the mill. And we're talking back 30 or 40 years ago. So good pressure by the government and good pressure by the municipality with working with the government to make sure these things happened.
See, because your experience in Marathon is similar, all along the lakeshore. Here in Thunder Bay, we've had, 3 mills that closed down that were also on the lake, and we're still dealing with how are we going to deal with the residual pollution that has gone into the water? So.
Absolutely, and we were very successful in that regard, Steve, by having the government push this and going after those polluters. Because, and I don't say they're polluters by on purpose, those were the rules of the day.
Yeah.
But today there's different rules, so we were able to go back through the government and get the remedial action done on the harbor. And that was over a $7 million program where they come in and they literally capped the harbor with about 15 centimeters of special sand and soil mixture, light rocks and whatever, scientifically known to cover over any type of silt that contains the mercury or the PCPs. So it's a good program, and we were supportive of it, and we helped push that through with the government, so it was good.
Great. We're going to have to take a short break.
Yeah.
Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Well.